Hi, it's time for some ass facts. Last week we talked about the science as to why higher magnification LPVOs struggle so much. This week we talk about the 1 to 10x Vudu from EOTECH. Can the 1 to 10x Vudu overcome the issues that I talked about in the previous video and put up as a good scope that you might be willing to actually spend a good chunk of money on? Maybe. It's complicated. Actually, spoilers, this scope is pretty weird and probably one of the harder products I've had to review. While it does suffer from many of the issues 10x scopes intrinsically have, none of them are actually debilitating, and it actually is a decent, good scope, and it really overcomes a lot of them. It's just a bit pricey for what ends up being a middle-of-the-road performer if you simply lop off the 10x for a 6 or even 8x. Warning, the following video contains extreme gear autism and will go into way too much goddamn detail on something that really doesn't fucking matter. Viewer discretion is advised. When you have the Vudu in hand, it's honestly quite standard at first, though very well built. We have a 1x LPVO that goes to 10x, backed up by a first focal plane reticle, capped windage, locking elevations. Cool. The locking is actually very simple, but very robust. Good job. Simply lift up, and you're free to dial, then set down when you're done. The D10 clicks are nice. That's some ASMR shit right there. The only downside is there is no zero stop, nor is there any indicator as far as I can tell for how many rotations you've done. It's not a huge deal if you pay attention to it for medium or even long range shooting, but for sure it's shitty if you have a derp moment where you dial, 10 mils plus, and then you reset the wrong way, perhaps on a different day. You then dial for another shot, and look at that, you've doped for the Hubble telescope as you send a 77 grain slug into LEO. The big feature that kind of sets the thing apart is that it has a 28mm objective backed up by a 34mm tube, so the whole thing is grown. This sets it ahead of something like the 24mm Razor HD, which has a number of intrinsic problems due to its size. We have very respectable eye relief that comes in just under 4 inches, pretty industry standard, with a fairly wide range back and forth on the low end. These usually come with a lever. I do not know where mine fucked off to. The entire rear housing moves instead of just a ring, which actually makes it fairly easy for dialing, even if you do, have your lever fuck off. The only downside is adjusting the diopter changes the magnification, which is, it's whatever, just set it and forget it. We have illumination handled by an array of buttons, middle for on, forward and back for, up and down. This is actually a fitting design because unlike other scopes, you typically won't turn this off because it's got a very aggressive auto off. Note, no auto on, but come on, it's EOTECH, give them some time, they'll need another 10 years for that. The brightness, while brighter than a lot of options on the market, and for sure brighter than the 1 to 6x variant, is still well short of what I would call red dot bright, and it's questionably daylight bright. This will not work to illuminate the center portion like we're used to with, say, a Razor HD, NX8, PST, you name it. It's really more there for dusk type shooting, though we can squeeze out some contrast in certain medium lighting conditions, which is a shame. This reticle could really be saved by having a red dot bright option. Throw in a very respectable weight of 21 ounces for a 34mm scope, and a very stout price tag of $1,600. That's a lot of money. We have something that is a good contender for a pretty middle-of-the-road premium optic. Let's get to the soft, subjective parts now. Why does that sound so seductive? The much larger ocular lens is awesome. It creates a very open feeling on the 1x and a far less claustrophobic experience at 10x. Unfortunately, the 1x itself is a very mixed bag. On one hand, we have truly excellent, spectacular glass. The color, the vibrance, you name it, mwah, amazing. But unfortunately, how that image is displayed is a bit lacking on the 1x. It's by no means bad, it works. But remember, we spent $1,600 on this thing. It fisheyes, it warps, it does all kinds of weird things. It's not a true 1x, you name it. Now, most LPVOs do have a degree of this. Most LPVOs are not really true 1x at very close range. I would put this in a similar camp to the $1,000 and lower first focal plane LPVOs, even the ones that don't go to 10x, which is actually quite impressive. Compared to other 10x LPVO options on the market, this 1x smokes them. A lot of times when you're shooting this, it all clicks, you get a beautiful collimated image, and it feels like you're looking through glass. This is very good glass, remember. But in low lighting conditions, medium distances, CQB, and other situations, you will notice the warping, the fisheye, the whatever, and your collimated images will sort of uncollimate, and it's kind of a shitty condition. This is right on the cusp of what I consider usable and unusable, and it will really depend on the person. If you're used to truly good 1x LPVOs and expect that, like me, hey, biases on the table, this will feel not necessarily terrible, but certainly lacking. Others will find this is well within tolerance levels, and yes, the glass and the optical engineering has done a lot to polish this turd. If you can kind of just look past it, literally, it's not nearly as big of a deal, though once again, those lacking lighting condition really kind of pushes this to the forefront. Moving on to the reticle, the Vudu has the iconic circle dot reticle, but the execution is distinctly EOTECH at home like. For most EOTECH holographic sights, we have an outer ring, the speed ring, which is about 65 MOA, which means in theory you can use it even out to 100 yards to make hits, but more realistically, we're using it from CQB to about 20 to 30 yards. The Vudu, being an EOTECH product, obviously has to have the speed ring, but they sort of forgot to make it all that functional. Yeah, it fucking looks cool. What am I doing with an 100 MOA speed ring? Engage ocean liners with an SPG? Anyways, it's not necessarily all that bad. The center aiming point is functionally hopeless indoors at speed, so our ocean liner reticle comes to save the day, and we can use it there to kind of just plop on your target. However, past 10 yards, and for sure by 15 or 20, the speed ring is an ornament. To remind you, you bought an EOTECH. The reticle design attempts to make guiding lines, but once again, it's sort of half-assed versus something like the thick boys you find on an NX8 or a Vortex first focal plane that lets you actually bracket shots at medium range. Sort of how the original EOTECH speed ring works. Anyway, if you're ripping it, this reticle is very easy to lose under recoil, transitions, and more. People often say, oh, I can see it at 1x just fine. No, I'm not talking about how visible it is at home in front of your computer while you finger fuck your rifle pointing it at the wall watching YouTube videos. Yeah, I do it too. We're talking about subconscious centering of the reticle during recoil, transitions, whatever, with very fast splits, half a second or lower. Often on the upper part of the recoil, especially if you're going really fast, I would lose the reticle. Sometimes I'd find it on the way down, and sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I missed because I just decided to send it and I didn't quite center it on my very small target. You could slow down and it sort of reappears when you back it off to above half-second splits. So does the time here literally matter? Maybe not. But the act of going from subconscious muscle memory to, oh god, where's the reticle, as you try to find it during shooting, that's kind of a big deal and does speak to the fact that in a lot of situations, the scope doesn't work with you, it works against you. Flipping the script a bit though, as we bump up through the reticle range, 2x, 3x, 4x, we actually get a really competent, well-designed reticle that gives us information, ranging, wind holds, and a good aiming point without being cluttered. This is a big part of LPVO usage. The speed ring disappears at about 6x, you won't see it anymore. Slide aside, I bought the LE5 reticle because for some reason all the other ones don't exist when I was buying it. I thought that I'd kind of despise the circle plus design that you see in the middle, but actually it's pretty good. It acts as a transparent circle till about 7x give or take, at which point you'll start using the plus, which is actually not nearly as bad as I thought, and actually is a very fine aiming point compared to even the other designs. Slight detour. Both the mill reticles have the Christmas tree, but the MOA is just delineations. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think EOTECH likes you guys very much. Whatever. Another win for MRAD gang. The 10x reticle is quite good. You have both the options of holding, dialing, or doing something in between, as so often I do. And the Christmas tree actually starts right away, so it's very easy to make rapid corrections, unlike many designs where the tree for some reason starts 2 to 3 mils lower. However, as good as the reticle design is past 2x all the way to 10x, we're once again let down by physics at the 10x. The top end has many issues, much like the 1x. Once again, right out of the gate, great fucking glass. The colors look awesome even compared to much larger objective scopes, or even supposedly other high-end scopes. No hazing, no dimming. I ranted about this last week, so go ahead and watch that video. The short and skinny is exit pupil. The exit pupil of 2.8 on this thing is only marginally larger than a fully constrained or constricted eyeball. This is an improvement over stuff like the Razer HD 10X or other 24mm objective designs which have an exit pupil even smaller than that. But you will find the eye box on this thing at the 10X, left, right, up, down, will be extremely tight. Now, good technique, good shooting, stabilized guns, flat surfaces do a lot to mitigate this, but it's still present. Movement, tremors, breathing, breezes, All this nonsense will cause you to drift in and out of the critical exit pupil, and the image will degrade from impressive to impressively bad. Most of that was from shooting on a bright as shit day with utterly constricted eyeballs on a very flat surface. Drop the light, shove me on a rock where I'm half squatting, cold, hungry, and being stabbed to death by a pointy rock as I desperately try to stabilize the gun. It only gets worse. Speaking of worse, no parallax adjust. You knew it was coming, but it's an LPVO. Now, this is something that most LPVOs suffer from. However, this is one of those scenarios where you can actually polish a turd. The glass on this guy is good enough that the image, yes, does look sort of kind of blurry, but it's actually clean enough under the blur, as fucking dumb as that sentence sounds, that I was able to go out to 700 yards and had no issues resolving a target and actually looking at things around the target. I had all my shooting gear, and I could tell, hey, that's that piece of shooting gear instead of, a rock. Well, how does this all come together, right? Is the sum of the parts worth more or less? Well, I can say with a great deal of confidence, this is not a generalist scope for a general purpose rifle. The 1X is just not good enough. It's good, especially for its class, but compared to all LPVOs, it leaves a lot to be desired. There are a lot of better options on the market with a better 1X, which are more fitting for a general purpose rifle. And there's no backup illumination with something like the NX8 to really bail it out. And the upper end features are really not needed enough to offset the fact that we're losing out on the 1X. And if the top end was actually needed, and you had no problems with the 1X, you'd still have to contend that the top end is okay at best and really fucking bad at worst. Now there's a scenario where I can see running something like this as semi-viable, and I tried it a lot, and I think Hop also tried it. He has his own setup. Put this in place of a 2 to 10x rifle scope on an SPR for more of a recce style mission. I actually just lost 100 subscribers. While it's not perfect at long range, especially considering the small objective, lack of parallax, and more, it absolutely does work out to range for both 5.56 and sort of 308. So we can dial and not be fucked by unlocked turrets, and we have a decent reticle to boot. And we get a 1X. Is it a good 1X? No, but it's not a bad 1X. And many might find it more preferable over a 12 o'clock red or offset red dot, which one might typically run in conjunction with a rifle scope to make up for the lack of a 1X setting. Assuming the 1X doesn't give you Forrest Whitaker eye, this actually works as a fundamental concept. My only complaint or counterpoint, word of warning, you name it, you can't have your cake and eat it too. This is not comparable to a rifle scope on the top end. We're lacking that focus or the parallax adjust, so while we can certainly resolve things, we may begin to struggle at extreme ranges to figure out facial expressions, body language, smaller animals in concealment, humans in concealment, you name it, versus a similarly priced high-end 2 to 10 scope or whatever you pick. And the absolutely brutal exit pupil makes this scope incredibly fatiguing to sit behind for more than 20 minutes at a time, as you just need to nail that head position to even see, and slight movements will cause the image to fade or degrade. Tying it back to the analogy at the start, the Vudu is not a bad scope. And in fact, it's a very impressive piece of technology, because in the aggregate, this is a very good scope and beats a lot of scopes in its category, not just 10 or 8x, but some of the 6x's as well. But ultimately, who cares? It's not a competition. The goal isn't to score a B+. The goal is to get a good scope for you. So make sure what was described here fits to you to a T, and that you're okay with the downsides. And most importantly, make sure you're not just getting a 10x LPVO on your gun for the sake of getting a 10x LPVO on your gun, and you actually need that magnification, and you're okay with the lack of a parallax, so on and so forth. Anyways, this has been a video. Thanks for watching. Some self-shillery. Reviews are expensive. This channel is a full-time job, but it doesn't pay like one. So if you want to support the longevity of this channel and feed my dog or something, consider doing all the YouTube bullshit, like, comment, feed the algorithm, but also subscribe star, link down in the description. You pay me some money every month to support this endeavor, and you get early access to vidjas and access to the edited podcast I do with Mr. Hoplifile. We're at about 20 plus videos now. So yeah, that's about it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Is this the Nova burrito? Hello, Nova burrito. Good
burrito.